Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Back to the Future Part 3 is over. You're not thinking fourth dimensionally.
From out of the west, in a cloud of dust, a thunder of hooves, and a mighty...
Great Scott. I know, this is heavy.
Indians! This summer, Marty and Doc go back one more time for their greatest adventure of all. Doc's living in the past.
Don't try it, Tannen!
But he's about to be history.
What kind of a future do you call that? I'm going back to 1885 and I'm bringing you home.
It's the last roundup.
Come on, run!
It's the final showdown.
Hey, lighten up, jerk!
Where Marty makes a name for himself.
What's your name, dude? Eastwood. Clint Eastwood. What kind of stupid name is that?
Doc meets his mate.
You saved my life.
Emmett Brown at your service.
And Tannen meets his match.
I'll hunt you and shoot you down like a duck. Nice dog, Buford. Shoot him down like a dog.
Michael J. Fox,
Where'd you learn to shoot like this?
7-Eleven.
Christopher Lloyd,
There's a fella that can't hold his liquor.
and Mary Steenburgen.
I never ever met a man like you before.
Gentlemen, excuse me, but my friend and I have to catch a train.
This summer, Steven Spielberg and Robert Zemeckis invite you
Come on, Marty!
to the Rough Rider. Rip roaring, rootin' tootin', straight shooting,
It's a holdup! It's a science experiment!
rousing conclusion of Back to the Future.
Let the festivities begin!
Back to the Future, Part 3.
All right, Andy, this is it. It's the end. This is the end. Da, 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 da. This is the end of Back to the Future. We finally get the end. At the end. No more talking about flying DeLoreans, although I could use a movie about a flying train. More on that later.
There's something that you can give you more flying train, Pete.
What?
Back to the Future, the animated series.
I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about that. I've never watched an episode of Back to the Future, the animated series. Is it worth watching?
You're missing out. It's fine. It's fine. It's,
Okay.
it was
All
a
right.
fun animated show that followed. It was kind of following the adventures of Doc and his family as they travel through time in their flying train. I mean, there's Marty and Jennifer.
gone.
No, Marty and Jennifer are still in it, but I can't. It's been a long time. I can't remember if they're the main character, but it seems like we spend more time with Doc Brown and his family, or if Doc Brown and his family are the main characters, and we drop in and visit Marty and Jennifer from time to time. But there's definitely a lot of the family in the train, flying
All
train.
right. Well, that is hereby enough of talking about the animated series, because we're here to talk about part 3 of this show. We're going back to the past, all the way to 1885. Got to get back in time, except for that's Huey Lewis, and this is, we know, all ZZ Top all the time.
Hey, we still get that. We get back in time at the very end.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right.
It's still there.
ZZ Top and the spinning guitars. Okay. Yeah. What do you think about this movie? I think you like this best of all. That's my call. This is your favorite of the 3. Controversial opinion.
Well, you're wrong, but I do enjoy it. I enjoy it more than the second one, and not as much as the first one.
Yeah, I think we end up on the same page. I feel like the third one actually makes good on a lot of the things that the second one maybe leaned into too hard. Some of the it just ended up being mumbo jumbo, and a strong lack of peripheral vision, and it really deflated in my latest watch of it. And I was worried about watching Back to the Future Part 3 because I thought these things made side by or back to back. I hope it's not nonsense. It was not nonsense. I had a really, really good time with this movie, and a really good time, like going back. Sometimes you watch the movie and you're just sort of done with it. I really enjoyed watching the movie, and then like watching all the special features and reading up on how they got it made and the stresses and struggles of making it happen, and the life that occurs while making a movie is it was an interesting story to me. So
yeah, I
am in favor of this movie. I am glad it exists.
This is one of those films that I kind of, as time progresses from viewing to viewing, there are a lot of issues that I have with it that kind of fade. But when I watch it, I'm like, oh, I forgot about this whole thing or that thing and this thing and that thing. And so I definitely have a lot of that sort of stuff throughout this film that does drive me crazy. Mm-hmm. And I'm finding as I get more distant from the 80s and early in 1990 when I first watched it, I find that there are things in here that I just struggle with more and more. That being said, I still have a lot of fun with this one. I love that it kind of it steps away from let's make a whole bunch of money and turns into kind of an actual love story at the heart of it between Doc and Clara. And that's something I really enjoy, is that it feels like they're doing something a little different and weirdly probably more in line with what Crispin Glover would have actually preferred, as opposed to just being all about the money. And so I think it's funny that they end up here, and I really end up enjoying so much of the heart of this film, even with a lot of the issues that I have.
I think so too. I want to talk about that in a minute, specifically about where this movie fits in the overall arc of the Back to the Future universe.
Well, let's do that in a second. So when the movie came out, it was rated PG at the time of its release. Here in the States, according to the ridiculous MPAA, and that is for some mild violence, gore, profanity, and some spitooning. And drinking. Some intense
buckethead.
Drinking alcohol that burns the bar top when you spill it.
Okay, Andy, we're doing the thing again when this movie opens. We're doing the thing where we're repeating the end of the movie to start this movie.
Yes. It's funny because as I watch things that were shot back to back, I was thinking about this with like the Matrix films or with the Lord of the Rings films, and they don't feel the need to do repeating action. This film could have legitimately started. I mean, this film was released 6 months after the first film. It legitimately could have started with Marty driving up to Doc's house and helping him in after he had passed out. But no, we actually end with essentially the climax of the first film as we see it in the climax of the second film, when he is driving the DeLorean down the main drag in 1955, and Doc Brown slides down the cable and plugs it in just in time for the lightning bolt to hit and course the 1.21 gigawatts of power into the wire and him and the DeLorean, sending the DeLorean into the future. Doc Brown runs and dances down the street, and then Marty comes running around the corner. All of this was the revised version that we saw at the end of part 2, and then Doc Brown passes out. I don't know. I guess it was fine to see that again, but I wasn't sure how necessary it was to kind of do that. Was it weird to start that with that again, as opposed to just kind of from that point on?
I don't know that I have a strong opinion about this, other than I can kind of feel, or at least make some internal assumptions about what Zemeckis and Gale were going for, that it feels like an in-universe kind of gimmick, that all the movies do this kind of repeat bit to get you into it. It might have been a callback from an older day, because what they were trying to do was to create this sense of narrative immediacy, and yet the movies were released a year apart or whatever. Like it felt to me like an okay bit of consistency, because they want this movie to feel like it starts the next minute. And so I think they could have started on the hill and with the car driving up and or that wonderful, there's sort of that slow tour around Doc's place as Marty's sleeping and his feet are up on the hoverboard. That's kind of a nice way to open. But I don't hate it the way it opens. I actually find it kind of charming, and it does get me into the spirit of the film.
Well, it's funny because in the second film, it repeats the end of the first film as a way to essentially introduce us to the new Jennifer. That's legitimately the only reason that they needed to do that. At the end of the second film, into the beginning of the third film, there's nothing different. And it's funny because the thing that immediately comes to mind, and it's not doing this, but it feels like, was there some at some point some intention? But it makes me think of Misery when Kathy Bates' character is talking about the serial that she watched, and how at the end of it, the car goes off the cliff, and she comes back the next week to watch the thing, and it shows that scene play out, but you see him jump out of the car before it goes off the cliff, and she's like, he didn't jump out of the cocky duty car, like that whole thing that drove her so crazy. And so it makes me think, like, are they, because there's nothing different about this one. And so it just makes me like, should I be scrutinizing this more closely? Is there actually something that I'm supposed to be getting out of it? And I know I'm probably overthinking it far too much.
Well, I think you are.
But it is one of those things. It does make me instantly start questioning, what are Gale and Zemeckis up to with this particular film that is going to shift any particular parts of the story that we had seen before.
Okay, I think you're right on. I think you're overthinking. I think what happened probably practically was we had to do this thing to introduce the new Jennifer at the beginning of the second movie, but because we had that and it was kind of fun, we're going to just go ahead and do that this time too. I think it was just a really practical thing.
Yeah, and this really was one of the first times where they had actually done, if not the first time, where they had done a back-to-back filming, and the release was so close to each other that they were legitimately probably just saying, let's just do this. It's a fun way to just kind of get everybody back into this mind frame or this mindset of where we are in context of the story.
Yeah. I think so. I think it was as simple as that. And I think it is a great excuse to transition us from the street scene over to Doc's house, and to do so with one of the most beautiful pieces of modded music by Silvestri. This new theme in this scene is gorgeous. I love the way it introduces us to this film, and I love the way it takes us all the way up to the Howdy Doody. I think it's great.
Yeah, I love Silvestri's score here. His piece at the end when they're on the train is some of my favorite in the whole trilogy. The actual closing credits music for the film is it's, I think, just a great mix of all the different pieces from the film. It is one of my favorites of, really, we talked about our favorite Zemeckis' scores, and I may actually say Back to the Future 3 might be my favorite of the trilogy here, more so than Back to the Future, just because it has those additional elements to it.
Yeah, that was something I had completely forgotten about this movie, was just how good the score was. The Huey Lewis in the first movie, I know this is kind of for our retake, which we'll need to talk about, but the Huey Lewis Back in Time track was a great addition to the first movie. Do you know the title of the ZZ Top track? We're off the top of your head.
Yeah, it's Double Back.
It is Double Back, but you had to kind of work for that. Like you looked up and to the left. You totally NLP'd yourself. It's Double Back. I
know it was a time thing, and I was trying to remember what it was, but
yeah, but can you sing it?
No, but what I always go to with ZZ Top in this film is their hoedown, whatever you call it, music that they're playing at the dance. Like, like that whole thing. Like that's where my brain goes when I think of ZZ Top in this film. Not ever Double Back.
Yeah, never Double Back. And I think that I could start singing Back in Time right now. Double Back I can't place at all. So, I don't know that ZZ Top as stunt music was the best choice, but maybe at the time I would have felt differently.
Well, they look the part, though. Like when you see them playing in the town square, it feels like, I can buy that.
Yeah, all right.
I don't buy them as a problem in the movie, the context of the film. I agree. I don't think that their song necessarily fits as well. But also it's like, I don't know. ZZ Top was never a group that I was like, I like a couple of their songs, but I never followed them or anything.
Yeah. All right. So this movie, listening to Zemeckis talk about kind of the and Gale talk about the overall arc of the three movies, Zemeckis pulls the change character card that Marty, over the course of all these movies, is not the principal change character in any of the movies. And in this one is no different. That the character that we are really following, this is Doc Brown's story. This is his love story. It is such a love story, in fact, and such a novelty for Christopher Lloyd, that this was his first on-screen kiss in his career, Christopher Lloyd. It is the story of him finding his humanity through family. What do you take? What do you take away from all that?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I do love. As I said, I love that this story really is Doc Brown's story. We're watching him change his opinion on time travel and the repercussions, which is kind of funny, really. But still, he's kind of gaining a new perspective on life and on love and on the purpose of living and all of that. And I find that very touching and powerful with the way that the characters that we've been presented with up to this point have played out. And I love that we get that side of Doc Brown, falling in love at first sight and how it changes him and what that means to him and everything. I really enjoy the journey of that.
Well, what I love so much about it, what I love that the movie is poking at, is the fact that they actually let Doc know a lot of stuff, right? They let him know when he's going to die. He sees the gravestone. They let him know that love is coming, and he shuns it, right? He refuses the call to have any sort of hope that he's going to fall in love with this Clara character at all. Even as he learns, it becomes increasingly difficult to avoid that future, right? That, oh, don't worry, I just have to not meet Clara. Oh, well, here comes the mayor. I need you to go pick up the new teacher. Her name's Clara. So all of these things stand in in the way of Doc trying to avoid all of he's trying to avoid all of the hints of the future, all of the ways he could corrupt the future, et cetera, et cetera. And then he meets her and the actual connection, the love at first sight connection is just too strong. And I find that incredibly touching. I love that is part of both Doc's transformation as a scientist, right? As kind of a whack job, and at the same time he becomes more sort of humane through meeting her, and that it is unavoidable. I think it's great.
Well, and that speaks to a certain extent the inevitability of elements within the kind of the way that time plays out. And we've seen it in other movies that deal with time travel where and maybe not time travel, but now I guess I'm thinking of destiny and like the idea of destiny and how certain characters are meant to do something, and my brain instantly went to the Final Destination franchise, which is totally different. But still, that whole idea of if you do something different than what you're supposed to do, the universe is going to find a way to get things back on track so that still happens.
Yes.
And I don't know what that says about Doc Brown and any of his time travel theories, because none of it actually would make sense in context of a scientist and the realities of time travel versus like how the universe works and a concept of destiny and that the whole you can't change the future. It's always going to, like, there's this set path for things to go. I don't know. It's an interesting element that's added here, and I think it's interesting, but I think I may run into some of my own issues with kind of what the franchise is saying about time travel and all that. But what it does do is it allows for that kind of that final transition for Doc Brown's character. And that's, I think, why I end up, forgiving it in so many ways.
Well, we should probably talk about what you have to forgive then, Andy.
Well, just the idea of Doc Brown had been so adamant about you can't change anything. The future is set, and we've got to put everything back the way it was because things have to play out the way it is. And then by the end of this film, he's in one of my least favorite bits in the entire franchise. It's when Jennifer comes up to him with the facts like a complete buffoon. It's just, God, the exposition in this is just awful. And the direction of it, the performance, everything, when she's like, but Doc Brown, when I had this fax, it had something on it and then it disappeared. And what does that mean? And all that stuff.
You can tell she's even struggling with delivering that line. Like, it's just impossible.
It's so bad. And he's just like, it means the future's not written and it can whatever we want to do. And I'm like, that's great now. And I guess it's good that you came to this at this point in the franchise as opposed to the beginning when he said, screw it.
Yeah.
And let's leave it the way it is. So I don't know. It's an interesting that's I guess the transition that, as far as his journey goes, it makes sense. And I suppose some of that could be seen as like there's a little bit of kind of like that selfish joy in acknowledging that, like, I may be screwing everything up, or I guess he would have been saying Marty is screwing all this stuff up with the future. We've got to get it back because he's making a mess of things. But when I'm doing it and I'm taking my wife and we're going up to the future, we're fixing my train to make it, futuristic and flying and all this stuff, it's all right because it's us. So I guess there's a little bit of that, but I end up forgiving it.
I think that's really important because like the entire premise is get back to the future and destroy the DeLorean.
Right.
And then get out of the way because I've made a new one, right? That was the whole the whole premise was stop time travel. You're right, except for mine.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. And now we're spreading it by having these two. And did you have the same note that those two kids look totally sociopathic? Like they're going to be problematic later. Those kids are now no time travel and they're going to be like time murderers.
I didn't have that note, but I did say, I bet neither of them really had a film career after this. And I didn't even look, but I should check and see. Maybe they've had much more robust career than I. Let me look up the Brown children and see.
But what was the note, do you think, that Zemeckis gave these kids when they're introduced? Like, okay, we're going to have you be revealed. You're going to jump off the little seat and come in the camera view, and I want you to look like you're about to boil a bunny. Like you're gonna find a younger child and start pulling its fingernails out with pliers. Like you're excited about that. It's awful.
We have Jules and Vern. Jules was played by Todd Cameron Brown. Interestingly, he's actually a Brown.
Oh, funny.
He was in two films, Worth Winning in 1989 and this in 1990. Plus, he was in. He has 5 TV credits in shows ranging from 1988 to 91. So, fairly small film career. And then the other, Vern, was played by Daniel Evans, and he was only in 2 things: an episode of Erie, Indiana in 91 and this film. And that was it.
Well, I'm sure they went on to thriving careers as pediatricians. I'm sure in the world they're very kind and they were given bad direction.
I think so.
Yeah, that's because movies are hard. Okay. That out of the way. This, so we get this movie. We got to talk about the relationship stuff real quick.
Well, before we go into the relationship, I just want to talk about a couple time since we kind of were setting it up with time travel and all this.
Okay, there
are a couple time things that I have questions for you about.
Oh, good. Yeah,
they're minor, but still things that I feel like when the filmmakers were working on this, they should have caught these elements, because I feel like, is this a glitch in time? So the first thing, Doc Brown, in 1955, buys Marty, or has Marty get dressed in some Western wear, which looks very much like Howdy Doody Time sort of stuff that they're seeing on TV. It's that kind of very colorful rodeo cowboy sort of outfit that Marty wears and goes back in time in. And in the past, Doc says, "Oh, who dressed you like that?" And Marty says, "You did." And it's a gag. It's a joke. It's funny. But Doc should have known that, because this is Doc from 1985 who went back to 1885 and had grown up from 1955 to 1985 after having dressed Marty that way. So yes, it's a 30-year-old memory plus, a few weeks, give or take, that he's been in the 1885. But he should have remembered, especially with all this time travel stuff, that obviously that's the sort of thing that you're really going to remember in your life. Like, holy crap.
Yeah.
I actually invented time travel. I helped this guy get back and forth in time a bunch of times. And I also dressed him like a crazy cowboy. That he should have known that.
Yes, because there was no reason for that particular memory ever to be erased. Right, like a picture.
And it's one of those things where the movie sets up like this Doc wouldn't have known that, but it's actually the older Doc, so he would have. That would be a memory.
He would have known that. Yeah, he would have known that already. I absolutely agree with that.
They played as a joke, but it ends up like when you think about it, it's like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't work.
But isn't this is also sort of the one true Biff problem, the paradox of one true, because there are things that Biff, I feel like, should have known, given all the shenanigans between 1 and 2, that he should have remembered and didn't.
Yeah.
So I feel like that this one is a good and a fringed call out, and it's problematic in the entire movie or entire trilogy. So what's the next one?
When they go to the grave, the cemetery, and they find Emmett's tombstone.
Yes, shot over a matter of $80.
Shot over a matter, but underneath that it says, what does it say? Like, remembered by his beloved Clara or something?
Yes. Shot in the back by Buford Tannen over a matter of $80, erected in eternal memory by his beloved Clara.
By his beloved Clara. And
what was her last name? Like Clara
Clayton,
Shot?
Clara
or something?
Clayton.
Clara
so
Clayton.
as we find out, the ravine in 1985 is Clayton Ravine. But when we go back to 1885, it's Shonash Ravine.
Mm-hmm.
And it
So
becomes
renamed.
It is renamed the Clayton Ravine because she drives off the edge of it in this wagon. How do both of those things happen? Because if she's dead, she would not have been able to meet Doc Brown.
The wagon, she would have gone over the cliff in the wagon in the very beginning of the movie, right? When Doc and...
Before he was killed. He's killed several days later.
Yes, right. And he rescues her from going over the wagon, right? That's the big rescue. And the wagon tumbles and breaks up at the bottom of the ravine.
Correct.
Is it... Okay. Later, it is renamed. Is it renamed because there is some connection to the fact that she was like somebody knows she was on the train and the train goes into the ravine and explodes? And people think she was on it, but she was actually pulled out and taken away on a voyage through time?
No, because now it's Eastwood Ravine.
No, that's a very good point, because they think he's the one.
And somehow everyone connects this person who stole the train. Let's name the ravine after this person who showed up for 2 days in town, stole a train, and now we're going to name a ravine after him. Anyway, I have issues with that gag.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
I think I actually just figured it out in my head as you were talking. I think in 1985, it was called Clayton Canyon, and he talks about this, like how every kid wished that their teacher would drive off Clayton Canyon or Clayton Ravine. So that's how he knew it was a teacher who died. That whole thing, right?
Okay.
So I think that it was Clayton Canyon all the way up until Doc Brown went back in time. Now, Marty wouldn't have known that it had changed in 1985 because at the time Doc goes back, it's 1955. And he wouldn't have known that it was now not
Eastwood
Clayton
Ravine.
Canyon. No, it was Shonash Ravine.
Shonash, right.
Because he hasn't gone over to it, and there's probably no signage anyway at 1955. So that's okay. So I think I figured it out in my head. So I think I'm okay with that one now, because I think in 1955, when Doc goes back to 1885, that's the point when suddenly now it stays Shonash Ravine. It doesn't change its name to Clayton Ravine. Okay, so I don't have an issue with that one anymore. So
okay,
whew.
That was two.
Do
you have a third one?
I don't have a third one, but I do have I guess, I don't know. What was the next point? Because my next thing was casting and faces.
I also wanted, this is a good segue. Marty comes out of the cave and there's a bear in the cave, right?
The old bear gag. Yeah.
The old bear gag. And he comes running and Marty, the bear's right behind him. Marty comes over this hill and falls concuss himself on the fence. Shouldn't that bear be like right behind him? Seamus finds Marty and looks to the left and the right, but not up the hill at the bear that is like supposedly right up there.
Or charging down at him.
Charging down at him. Like the bear is gone. Now that the bear is out of frame, we don't see it. This is the inverse of the Spielberg little hide and seek trick. And so the bear's gone. Bear doesn't exist anymore because it's out of frame.
That's because it was a plot. It was a plot bear.
It's a plot bear. It was a plot bear.
Yeah, we need to add that to our glossary.
Chekhov's
plot
bear.
No.
Because the bear was never used again. So it's not Chekhov's bear. Okay. So that leads us to is discovered by Seamus McFly. And we have now we have Marty playing his predecessor, his ancestor, and we have Leah Thompson again playing now apparently her ancestor, Maggie.
But this is the thing that makes no sense. It's Leah Thompson, who is his mother, but she's not with his father. She's with him. And that creates a weird... Does that create any weirdness at all?
I hate it. It breaks my brain every time. There is zero reason these people should have been cast as they are. It is just a sight gag. That's all it is. And we don't know what to do with Leah Thompson. She has to be in the third movie, kind of a gag. I don't understand it. And this is a thing that takes me out of this movie. That these people, maybe I can see Marty, or Michael J. Fox playing his ancestor. Like I can sort of get that. Put the mustache on him and make him look old Westy. But I can make no reason. There's no reason for Leah Thompson to look like she does.
Well, look, I know they had issues with Crispin Glover in this franchise, but that basically means that his ancestry goes look-wise: Michael J. Fox, yeah. Michael J. Fox, Michael J. Fox, Michael J. Fox, Crispin Glover, Michael J. Fox, Michael J. Fox, Michael J. Fox,
Michael J. Fox. Right.
Like, where is the logic? Like, there's no logic at all. It's wacky. It is just wacky. I'm not a fan. Honestly, as I watch it this time, I actually thought when I was younger and I was watching it, I'm like, it's fun. It's, watching, the same face on screen together. And it was kind of just a fun way to do it.
Yeah.
Now, as I watch it, I'm going, oh, of course, this is early Zemeckis doing his, let's play ILM. Let's do some fun tech. What do you have? Ooh, let's use these motion control cameras.
Stuff. Yeah.
Not motion capture, motion control, so that we can have the same actor in the scene together seamlessly, and not just the static, shots that like they were doing back in not Freaky Friday. What's the one? Parent Trap. Where it's but it's a locked shot, and they would film one half of the film with the other half covered, and then they would back the film up and they would do the same thing again, but with the other side covered up, so that they could capture Haley Mills twice on screen together. And at the time, that was spectacular. And in the context of a movie about twins, it makes a lot more sense. Here, when you have this stuff with his ancestors, it starts getting ridiculous, especially as they start bringing Leah Thompson in. And now she's with Michael J. Fox, who she was in love with in the 50s, but they weren't related in any way at all. But now somehow she's someone who looks just like her. Yeah. It's just,
is it in some way narratively? Is it in some way that she is like the reason she's so attracted to Calvin is because she has a genetic memory of being in love with this guy who looks exactly like Calvin? Like, is that even possible?
But like, how do her genes then go from this family to like, I guess her family line, maybe it's a distant relative going the other direction who kind of swings back as Lorraine in the 50s.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. It's not good. There's no reason that she should look like she does. It is complete. It's just bug nuts, crazy town. It's fun and funny, but it reminds me of two things. One, that the genes don't work the way the movie thinks genes work. And two, they didn't know what to do with Lorraine or with Leah Thompson in this movie. And the same thing for Elizabeth Shue. And like, these are just dramatically underwritten characters in what could have been a really fun trilogy for all the performers and ended up not being that. And that's what I couldn't help thinking about in this sequence.
That's really what it comes down to. I mean, and again, I really do enjoy this film so much more than the last one. But and I don't know if that's a Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis thing where they just really struggle with getting out of their heads the whole idea of this is about Doc and Marty and it needs to be just them. And everybody else is peripheral. I mean, and yes, we do have kind of a love story for Marty, a love story for Doc, but in no way do they become like as important as just all the time travel stuff going on with Marty and Doc. And that, that's a struggle. And it is it's a bit frustrating because I would really have enjoyed if they were able to, like, as the story progressed, like in the second film, it becomes Doc and Marty and Jennifer as they're sorting through stuff. And as they go back in time, like, are we getting more of an expansive story with more characters? And, it could have just been that at the time in the 80s, they were just, they didn't have the screenwriting kind of wherewithal to kind of put a story like that together.
Well, I wonder, and it does beg the question if the story that we got is in any way overtold, right? Like, is there stuff in here that feels superfluous that maybe we could have massaged more of a story for these other two characters in some way to make room for it? I think your point is well taken, that there's just, there are some holes that could have been filled. I feel like there's an aspirational story in here that would have made great use of everybody and did not. But anyway, I love Steenburgen, though. She's fantastic. Just neat to see her here. It sounds like she had a good time on this movie. It sounds like that she wasn't going to do it until her kids told her she had to do this movie. I like all of that. I like all of that sort of backstory getting her into the movie. And I think, as sort of a lightweight love interest character, it's fun.
Have you seen Time After Time?
Oh, yes.
I never have.
Oh.
But
talk about a score. God, that piano.
Well, but as I've read about it, and it's a film I've known about. I mean, I've certainly known it's out there, but I didn't realize that. And she commented on this, how really she's playing like so much the exact same character that she played in that film. Which is funny how, she, I guess 11 years before, 1979, when that film came out, she had fallen in love with a person who said he was from a different time period and doesn't believe him, only to finally admit, that she does love him and run after him and end up going with him to live in their time. And she said it was very weird to be doing that again.
Yeah,
I thought was very funny. And so now I'm like, gosh, I really should watch that movie, finally.
I think so, because who was that? That was Malcolm McDowell?
Malcolm McDowell and David Warner.
David Warner, right.
Yeah, as, who are they, like Sherlock Holmes and, no, it's Wells.
It's Wells, it's H.G. Wells.
H.G. Wells and Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
So that's a funny little time travel nod, which I think is charming. I really do enjoy Mary Steenburgen in the film, and I feel like so much of it is probably just because her character is so sweet and has this kind of this easy way about her. That being said, it's not a big part. We don't really get much of her other than her being smitten with Doc. That's her story. Unfortunately, like, she's moved to town to be a teacher. We never get any of that. We basically start with her as on the runaway stagecoach, and then they dance, and then he confesses his love to her and says, I can't be with you anymore because I'm from the future, and she tells him to get out, and then she realizes she loves him and goes after him, and we have the whole climax. And that's kind of it. And it's not again, speaking to how the characters are just not given that much time. It is unfortunate that she also isn't given that much time, but it speaks to her, Mary Steenburgen, and the character, that she is so easy to love. And I do really enjoy that with her.
Yeah. She's like, the movie begged for a corset wearing love interest, and we got that. Would this have been an opportunity for a stronger part? Maybe in 2022, but at the time, it is what we got. It was a foil character for Doc, and it's fine. It's not fine, but it's fine. Yeah.
Speaking of foils, though, what do you think of Tom Wilson back this time as Buford Tannen?
I love Tom Wilson more in this movie as Mad Dog, especially because they set him up as Mad Dog because of his tendency to growl and drool a lot. That was awesome. I think I like him. I like him in this movie a lot. Do I like him better than Griff? Yeah, I like him better. Do I like him better than Biff? The 55? I don't think so. But he is an awful lot of fun in this movie, and I think this movie hearing Wilson talk about this movie in particular, this is one that stretched him more than the others because he had to learn to ride a horse and do throw a lariat and do all of the Western stunt stuff that working with just this exceptional class of stunt performers who apparently were quite eager to get on horses and do cool stuff in a good old fashioned Western set of Western sequences. And I think he held his own absolutely in this horse riding, gun toting universe. I thought it was fantastic.
He is fun as this character. We've already talked about the duality of the actor, the various actors in multiple roles. He's the one that bugs me the least. And honestly, if they had just left it as him and it was just him across time as the multiple versions and incarnations of Biff, I honestly would probably not care. I think I probably would be totally okay if Biff, Griff, Buford, if it was always this same actor. I only end up really struggling mostly in this film because of Leah Thompson playing now his wife. Like, weirdly, that's the thing that I'm just like, wait a minute, isn't that his mother? That, is like the weird stuff going on. So, so for Buford, I enjoy him. And actually, I may enjoy Buford, even though he's not given the screen time that we get with Biff in the previous two films. I may enjoy Buford the most, but that's just because I think Tom Wilson seemed to have found a joy with performing an Old West character. Like, he just seems to just get into it and really fit that world really well. Really, really well.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he was right at home and he clearly loved it. Like, he was having a good time. Hearing him talk about it. The other interesting thing to hear him talk about, which I think is fantastic, is that he brings this up with respect to the first movie, which I don't think we talked about, the Eric Stoltz replacement. He and Doc both say, we thought, Christopher Lloyd both said, we thought every day was a maybe day when there was talk of Eric Stoltz being fired. Like, they all thought they were going to be fired and replaced because they knew something was wrong. They didn't know what it was. And I think that's really fascinating to come all the way from that level of uncertainty in the first movie to this movie, which for their roles seems really thriving, right? It just feels like these movies are, this movie is about them, more so Doc for sure. But I think that's really cool. To watch them flourish in this trilogy. They made good use of them.
Yeah, I agree. It is interesting, the world of big budget Hollywood projects that have enough of a budget early in the project to say, we have a problem, let's figure out who we need to replace them, as opposed to some indie film where you're just like, well, hell, this is what we got. We got to figure out how to make it work.
Oh, you mean the mic wasn't recording for that scene? Oh, well, put a song on it. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is interesting. We get some other interesting performers in here. One, we should just mention Richard Dysart, who we know and love, pops up as a
wire salesman.
Barbed wire salesman. A very expositional barbed wire salesman who's the one who has to be the one in the train mentioning the whole, how much Doc was in love with this woman, blah, 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 only to have it be Clara who actually is hearing all of this, the whole
I don't love
moment.
That.
The turn for her,
cheeky.
It plays, not super great, but it is what it is. But the trio that's definitely worth talking about. It's the three old Western actors who pop up in the movie in the bar. We have
the
Pat
saloon
Buttram,
old timers.
Yeah, Pat Buttram, Harry Carey Jr., and Dub Taylor as three guys in there having some drinks and just giving some great lines. Dub Taylor has always been one of those character actors that has a face that I just love and just works so well. And then I think I don't know which one, if it's Pat Buttram or Harry Carey Jr. who has that voice that
I think that's
that
Harry Carey Jr.
when he's talking. That Robert Zemeckis, I believe, doesn't he then use him again as one of the bullet characters, that little cartoon bullets in Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Yes. Yeah. I love this. And it was interesting to read that it was these guys in this movie that got the movie more attention in terms of just the making of and about the movies because of their legacy in Western cinema, that as a promotional tool, just casting these guys as the saloon old-timers was really good for the press of this movie. And it probably had an outsized effect on the number of people wanting to talk about it. That was really interesting.
Yeah, no, it was super, super cool to see them just kind of popping up in here. And it actually is Pat Buttram, who's the one who pops up.
Oh, he's the voice?
Yeah, he's the...
Okay.
And
he's the voice.
Roger Rabbit, of course, was a couple years before this, so...
Yeah, I'm not so much of a student of the old Western movies to have been able to place and name them, just knowing that they were there. But their voices, I think, were as notable as their faces.
Dub Taylor's I don't know, like he is a face that I recognize so well, and it's always in, I'm not sure what the hat is, but it's that hat. It's almost like a bowler hat, like, but I'm not sure what movie specifically I even think of with that image of Dub Taylor, but it's like, that's Dub Taylor. He's in that hat and with kind of that look on his face. So I don't know. It's funny how these things just burn into your head over time. This is exactly the image. Little House on the Prairie is where it's from, Pete. Little House on the Prairie. I'm looking him up right now. That is the version of Dub Taylor burned in my head because of that face. I'm going to drop it into our chat. For those of you who are members, you can hop into our Discord community and to join in the chat while we're recording this. But it's that version of Dub Taylor that is so much.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. That's him. Yeah, okay.
That's him. Yeah.
I had him swapped in my head for Harry Carey Jr. Harry Carey Jr. is not him. That is Dub Taylor. All right. Yep. The other one is Burton Gillum, who is the other sort of face of note, who was the cult gun salesman. He has one of those faces and voices that I thought was really great. And speaking of the chat room, Brian in the chat room aptly notes he was in Blazing Saddles as another fantastic Western for him to show up. He's got 94 credits. He's been in a ton of stuff, and I loved watching him and show up in this one.
You know what I always think of him in? Honeymoon in Vegas. He's one of the Elvis impersonators, the ones that are jumping out of the plane.
Absolutely.
Oh man,
yeah,
he's great. Another face. There are a lot of faces throughout this that I love. Speaking of faces, yes. Speaking of faces, and this goes to the issue, one of our biggest issues from the last film, but Flea as Needles and his gang. We get this whole end. Luckily, the ripples through time work because Marty drives over to Jennifer's place and she's sleeping on the porch. They have this whole, it was all a crazy dream, which is, of course, one of the fantastic tropes that you get in this film. The whole, it was all just a dream. But the whole thing is they go driving and they have this challenge by Needles. And what's your matter? You chicken? This is the character turn that Marty has taken. He had the same thing when earlier in the film when Buford calls him Yella, and they go at it there. But this is the final resolution to that whole thing, the chicken resolution. And we see that Marty has actually grown. But again, it's
stupid.
It plays. It was so frustrating in the last film that I just hate it in this film. Like when I see Needles pull up at the end, I'm like, oh. And this is that whole car accident that they talked about in the last film that Exposition Lorraine from the future had, and
My problem with it is not necessarily that it's not a sign that he's grown. At this point, I think at the end of this movie, they have enough precedent from the second film to kind of lean into the chicken thing. I'm okay with that. What I hate about it is Marty is in this position to change in his life, to make a different choice, to not take stupid gambles and chooses to do the one thing that is potentially more ridiculous than flooring it and racing needles, which is to floor it in reverse.
I was like, I didn't
doing?
see him check his rearview mirror to make
No.
sure there wasn't a car there.
It's awful. It's so stupid. What kind of behavior is this? Avoiding risk to do something more risky.
Yeah.
Oh, you sure showed needles.
Yeah. God, it's just is so
hate it.
frustrating. The only thing I hate more than that is, as I've already expressed my disdain for, it's Jennifer's facts exposition nonsense that we have.
Facts position,
at the very
we call that.
Facts position. Glossary.
It's terrible.
Another glossary.
It's really
Facts position.
It's really bad, and it's again just demonstrates how underwritten the character is, and the fact that they didn't have enough for her to do to actually give her something as a character, and just had to use her as a narrative tool. I hate that. That's not good. So,
oh man, this film, I really enjoy it. I will say everything with the train at the end is, I think, some of the most spectacular part of this film. It's exhilarating, the way that it's constructed, the different way that the heated elements kind of blow to kind of get the train going faster and faster. Like, all of that plays exceptionally well. The whole, the hoverboard gag, like, all of it works. It all is, it's effective, it's interesting, it's exciting, and it builds very effectively to the climax of the DeLorean shooting off across the train track that isn't there as the train goes crashing below it. It's a perfect ending for this film. I have so much fun once we get onto the train at the end. It's just great stuff.
Yes, I love that. I think it's fantastic. It is when we get back to the future that I think it's. I only stopped because the DeLorean that the other train, the modern train, crushes that's on the tracks, it feels like it sort of just incinerates. I every time I watch this, I think that train would derail. Like, I think the train would have killed a lot of people.
Not just derail, but just like at least stop. Like, from their perspective, it looks like a car on the tracks. Do they just not care? Like, you know what? We've got a deadline.
On the complete other side of that entire like effect is the DeLorean is on train wheels. Like, it rolls. It's been coasting. Like, wouldn't it maybe? I understand that just the force of impact, but the train wasn't going that fast. Like, is there any sense it would have been crushed and pushed, and not completely disintegrated? So that's
it's like they made it out of Legos suddenly.
It is like suddenly it just fell up. But there were no screws or rivets or anything like that.
And also, none of the cars that are at the crossing do anything. Like, there are people, but
nobody cares.
No one cares. The car
got
blown to bits,
destroyed, totally destroyed. Marty leaves the scene, right? Comes back an hour later, and the debris is all still there, and nobody's done anything with it. Like, the place is totally deserted.
Not a soul to be seen.
Amazing.
I was wondering because then we get the flying train. Nope, no one is there. Right. This is the quietest. They always, in all these films, this has become a trope in and of itself. They always manage, when they're doing time travel work, whether it's on the street out in front of Marty's place or downtown 1955 or this particular bridge, no one is ever around when there is a train.
Weather experiment.
Oh, my gosh.
They have maybe it's a peripheral vision thing that everybody's there, but they're all looking slightly to the left or right, and they can't see it.
Yeah,
that's possible. So I have a problem with some of how they handle the mechanics of the end. It does take me out of the movie, but I love the actual train explosion, the run up to the explosion. I love the log mechanic. Like, the setups and payoffs there are really good, and so that's fun. I like the arrow in the fuel line, right? That setup of having lost fuel. Now we have new canon to introduce about the DeLorean, that in fact the fusion generator doesn't power the combustion engine. They've never actually talked about that. So that became an important part of the movie in this, of the limitation in this movie that they have to overcome. So
I had issues with that, because does that mean in 2015 future in the movie that every flying car actually has to stop to get gas, and also then has to go put stuff into their little converter thing so that it can power up?
Oh, see, now you've broken me, because I do think that's probably because why do they have service stations in they go to the service station in the future.
Well, we see
cars pull in.
Yeah.
But we don't know if it's filling up with like traditional gasoline, is what you're
saying.
saying.
Or are they just putting banana peels and trash into the Mr. Fusion?
Mr. Fusion. What is the Mr. Fusion device powering if not time circuits? Like, it must be powering the engine to the car.
To hover.
Or maybe it's just the hover circuits, but the combustion engine turns on when it's on the ground. You're right. Now I don't like it. I did like it, and now I don't like it anymore. Stupid.
You know what every hoverboard needs is a little baby Mr. Fusion. Like, how does the hoverboard, does it just plug into
It's because it's supposedly a cold fusion levitating device. That's what it supposedly is, right?
Why are we digging so deep into all this?
We don't
stuff?
know.
Yeah.
Also, we don't know science the way some people know science.
We know movie science.
So the movie science is now I don't like but I do like the flying train at the end. I like the flying train and the way it so leans in on that sort of like steampunkiness of Jules Verne and the design of it. And when it lifts up and flies away, it is just an exhilarating bit that reminds you that this part of the story is over. The trilogy is over. It also, I think, completes and reframes the trilogy as a trilogy for me. At the end, I get the title in the end, I get the big music, and the train flies into my face. And I think it makes it a complete experience with the sense of hope that I love at the end of movies like this, that something is still going on even though I can't see it. And I think that's like the childlike wonder of the movies that I like so much. And I think this movie nails that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It is a fun one. Before we move on past this, since we've talked about it a number of times, Chekhov, Pete. Are you familiar with Chekhov?
Yeah.
There are a couple elements labeled on tvtropes.org as under the Chekhov's gun trope. Any sense as to what they are? I'll tell you, I've already mentioned one of them.
Check the gun. I already have it. Is it the gun? No,
there is no. Something that is set up and then paid off. Do you want to guess, or do you want me to tell you?
No, I just want you to tell me.
Well, the first is the hoverboard. He brings it. We see it.
Yeah.
It's in the back of his car. It's not dealt with until it's needed at the end when Doc rescues Clara.
Yeah, and they actually make a note of it to say, oh, don't forget your floating board when they're in the movie theater parking lot.
Right.
Yeah, okay, good.
By the way, movie theater, there's no way that car got 88 miles per hour across the drive-thru.
Totally agree.
Drive-in movie theater. Yeah.
Yes. Would you call that Chekhov's Native American hunting party? It just immediately paid off.
That felt so of the era. And it honestly felt dated. It honestly felt like 1955 version of a party of Native Americans. I will say Monument Valley has never looked more beautiful. Great filming at Monument Valley for this.
Yeah.
The second Chekhov's gun. Earlier in the movie, Doc uses a scale model to illustrate his plan to get the DeLorean up to 88 miles per hour. Later, Clara comes to Doc's shop and finds the model DeLorean with time machine written on it, which makes her realize that Emmett was telling the truth about being from the future.
That's awesome. Or he's just an avid modeler. Can't he? Okay.
Yes. So those are the two Chekhov. We talked about this in our Paddington series. We should just see what other Chekhov elements come from this franchise. But
so I like that.
There you go. All right. Well, everybody, we'll be right back. But first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by The Magnetic Buzz, Oriole Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at d-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Sort of a Chekhov's gun is the Chekhov's gun from Back to the Future Part 2 in the video game that ends up getting paid off here in the video game.
Well, there's definitely the setups from, I mean, it's something we didn't really talk about, but even the Fistful of Dollars element that he saw,
right.
That Biff was watching in the messed up 1985. He uses that element from the movie here in this film as putting the steel plate from the front of the stove under his poncho. So
yeah, that was great.
Yeah. So I mean, there are definitely some more setups and payoffs like that. So for sure.
And I do one other thing that we didn't talk about is some of I mean, Christopher Lloyd is already a very physical actor, and he's very funny. And I love the responses that he does, his face when he sees. There's a little bit of that in the very open when, you know, Marty is in the house and he doesn't see Marty in the house, and he's making his recording and he sees Marty and he freaks out. He does that patented Christopher Lloyd freak out. He does the anything with him drinking and his relationship with the bartender, saying, "Oh, you remember what happened?" he stood there for hours talking and had never taken a drink. Like that stuff was priceless. Priceless, I tell you. I thought he was great around the booze.
He was. It was a lot of fun.
Do you think he actually fell on the table?
I don't know.
Got drunk, passed out? Do you think he did his own stunt?
Yeah, I think he totally did. He said, "Not unless I get really drunk."
The table comes over him and hits him in the back. Like, that's surprised he wasn't actually concussed. All right. Are there sequels and or remakes to this, Andy?
What's interesting is Zemeckis really is adamantly opposed to ever having more films or sequels made from this. He doesn't want remakes. He doesn't want anything with this franchise ever to be done again. And as the writer and producer, he seems to have the power to keep it from happening. He said, unless it was Michael J. Fox, and with his health conditions, it's not going to happen. But we'll never return to this. I mean, there had been speculation. Tom Holland had said at some point that some producer had talked to him about coming on board to reprise it, but he said he didn't think that he would be able to carry that the weight of the films, which he called perfect films. So I don't think that we'll get more. We did get a short film that came out in 2015, right when the film came out, called Doc Brown Saves the World, which was Christopher Lloyd in a little thing that he did. There was, of course, the video game, the animated series, which you brought up. There was a board game, The Ride, which is at Universal, which fun-ish story. We went on it when I went to Universal Studios and got stuck. The car did not come down. So they're just like, well, we'll just leave you up there for the next one and see if it comes down after that. And so we basically got to go on it a second time, and then it did come down, in fact. But it was kind of fun.
I don't want to totally take us on derail our conversation, but I don't actually know what The Ride is.
It was Doc and Biff, and I believe Marty pops up briefly, but mostly you're with Doc and Biff. And it's one of those things where you go all through time and you're traveling in a DeLorean and with Doc, I think. I honestly can't remember specifically, but yeah, you're in a little DeLorean, you and however 8 people, and it raises up and you're in this big kind of a curved screen, like a full view thing where you're kind of watching this whole thing playing out in your whole space. And it's a moving ride where you're flying around and the car's moving, very much kind of like the Indiana Jones ride or any of those sorts of things. And so it was fun. I mean, it was a fun little ride to do. But I think they're all gone now. My understanding is they've replaced it with the Simpsons ride now.
Oh, well, that's sad. Oh, there it is. The full ride, full experience. I was just looking at that. Thank you for coming to the Institute of Future Technology on behalf of Dr. Emmett Brown. Yeah. All right.
And did you ever see the thing that it was an April Fool's video with Christopher Lloyd and I think Tony Hawk? Did you ever see that
where
they make where they do this whole thing about having come up with an actual hoverboard finally, and it was a very fun bit that they released. Looks like it was 8 years ago, and it was this whole thing that they had actually finally created a hoverboard, and the whole thing was just a spoof. Kind of as an April Fool's prank.
Wasn't it around that time that some actual scientists came up with the technology that would get us there? But then they said it is practically impossible because the temperatures you have to keep the hoverboard at in order the hover like element at, because we don't have like room temperature whatever the reaction is. You can't do it practically, but they could slide a thing around a table as long as it was really cold, which got my hopes up, but I don't know what I'm talking about. I would never ride a hoverboard.
As long as you're doing it in Antarctica, you're totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wicked cold. And the whole thing about that technology, what I really want out of that hoverboard technology is I want what's in Star Wars, where they actually are able to push stuff around like gurneys and, dollies and stuff that hover. That's what I really want. Move heavy things. I don't want to be on it myself.
So you don't want a land speeder. You just want a lifter. Like
I'm just saying I don't want a skateboard. I would absolutely want a land speeder. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
How do they stop, though? I have stop anxiety on the speeders. You just slide into stuff.
just slide to a stop.
Just really reckless. But I'd be into it. All right. What were you talking? Where were we? We were on the game, and then there was the hover thing, the hover gag.
And then just all the other stuff, comics, books, video games. Stuff. And there was a Toyota commercial in 2015. They were marketing, I don't remember what the car was, but it was a new Toyota, the Mirai or something like that. The whole concept of the commercial was like, the fuel of the future or whatever. It was supposed to be a more fuel efficient vehicle, basically. But that's, I think that's about the extent of it. So, lots of stuff, but
all right.
No more movies that we shall be seeing.
How did it do at award season?
It did okay. Nowhere near as well as the previous two. It had 5 wins with 11 other nominations. At the Saturn Awards, Tom Wilson won Best Supporting Actor and Alan Silvestri won Best Score. It was nominated for Best Sci-Fi Film. We talked about this last time because this and Back to the Future Part 2 both ended up in the same awards year with the Saturn. So it was nominated for Best Science Fiction Film, but lost to Total Recall. Mary Steenburgen was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, but lost to Whoopi Goldberg for Ghost. Was nominated for Best Director, but lost to James Cameron for The Abyss, and lost to Total Recall for Best Costumes. At the Hugo Awards, which are the best science fiction or fantasy works of the previous year awarded by the World Science Fiction Society, it was nominated for Best Dramatic Presentation, but lost to Edward Scissorhands. The other films nominated Ghost, The Witches, and Total Recall. So, it was a good time for some interesting science fiction and fantasy films to be coming out. And certainly it fits in the mix, but it's also, I would agree, it's not the best of the bunch.
So how did it do at the box office? Did he make his money?
Well, the final part of the trilogy, Zemeckis had yet another $40 million to work with. And I'm going to straight up tell you right now, first off, $40 million, that's $78.4 million in today's dollars. Both this film and the previous film are both listed as having had a budget of $40 million, but there was also something that said they had $40 million to make the two films back to back. But it's very unclear if they had $40 million to make them back to back per film or total. They're both listed as having a budget of $40 million. So I'm just going with $40 million each, but it's entirely possible it was actually $20 million each and just $40 million to do this whole thing. It's not clear the way that any of this is put together.
But what does that do to AppFM, Andy? That really must complicate your spreadsheet. Tell me more.
I'm just saying it has a budget of $40 million, and we're just going with it. And I'm not I'm not going deep. This film opened May 24th, 1990, a mere 6 months after the last film, opposite two films that I don't remember at all, Firebirds and a limited release of Jesus of Montreal. Do you remember either of those films?
Nope, they don't exist.
Well, this film could not hold the number one spot opposite the oncoming glut of summer entertainment, but it did manage to at least stay in the top 10 for 6 weeks. Did not do nearly as well as its predecessors, but it still did well for itself, earning $88.3 million domestically and $156.8 million internationally for a total gross of $480.3 million in today's dollars. That leaves the film with an adjusted profit per finished minute of almost $3.4 million. And even though it wasn't the success of the previous two, it does mark a strong position for this whole trilogy.
Well, I'm sure glad we talked about it. I think that I'm glad that it made some money. I'm glad that 3 for me is now better than 2. I had no idea that was going to be the lesson learned out of this trilogy. So I had a blast. We didn't even talk about the Rube Goldberg machine in 3 that I thought was a neat comeback from episode 1.
There were some strange things that they had in this film, like the Rube Goldberg machine. I'm like, is this just his thing? Like, do we need to have that? We never had it in 1955. It was just, just I don't know.
In that respect, isn't it interesting that this movie could make like a pretty easy sequel to part 1? Like, you really, I think you could just watch these two back to back and skip the second one altogether.
That's entirely possible. The other weird thing, just as a side note, was like, what was up with the strange magnifying glass gag that they had not once but twice in the film?
Yeah, they really liked that gag a lot.
I mean, it's a thing that I like in movies because it just is funny to look at. But to pull it twice, I was just like, wow, they really liked it. Really liked it.
Oh, so hard.
Anyway, it's a fun movie. I do enjoy it. I wish that it was. I wish that when I watch them, that I find that either the second or third really held up as strong as the first film does. But I still do enjoy the heart of this one, and so in the end, I end up enjoying the trilogy largely because it ends on a note full of heart.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Well, we will be right back for our ratings, everybody. But first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, Jason Moore's 2012 film, Pitch Perfect, kicking off our next series looking at some serious acapella.
Hi there. Welcome to Barton University. Here's your official BU rape whistle. Don't blow it unless it's actually happening.
Hi. Any interest in joining our music group?
Whenever you're ready, dude. Oh, not a dude.
We sing songs without any instruments. It's all from our mouths. Yikes. Sorry, I don't even sing. What's your name?
Fat Amy.
You call yourself Fat Amy?
Yeah, so tweak bitches like you don't do it behind my back.
Oh my god! You can sing!
You have to join the Bellas.
I can't concentrate until you cover your junk.
I'm not leaving here until you sing.
Bulletproof, fire away, fire away.
You have a lovely voice.
Thanks.
Oh boy, the bad boys of acapella have just gotten badder.
You girls are awesome. Lee Horrible, I Hate You, Kill Yourselves, Girl Powers.
This is a list of all of the songs that we have ever performed. There's nothing from this century on here. It's not enough to be good. We need to be different. Our goal is to get to the finals. How are we paying for regionals? A bikini car wash is definitely out of the question.
No, Aubrey, I'm like super good at bikini car washes.
There will be no more wasting time with school or boyfriends. Can I trust you will add your own cardio?
Yeah, no, don't put me down for cardio.
What are you doing? Horizontal running.
Are you guys getting ready for the riff off?
What's a riff off?
Mickey, you're so fine, you blow my mind. Hey, Mickey!
Shorty, get down, good lord. Strictly bitch, you don't play around. Cover much ground, got game by the pound. I like the way you work it, no diggity. I gotta bag it up, baby. Let's remix this business.
What boring estrogen-filled set have you prepared for us?
Hey, Amy!
I was just being shot!
You guys are gonna get pitch slapped so hard, your man boobs are gonna concave.
No diggity.
I like the way you work it.
I have a feeling we should kiss.
I sometimes have a feeling I can do crystal meth, but then I think, better not.
Okay, Andy, we're going to talk about some Letterboxd right now. Letterboxd, it's our favorite social network for movie lovers. If you too want to get in on the business with Letterboxd, if you fall in love with it like we have and you want to upgrade to a pro or patron membership, just use the discount code NEXTREEL at checkout or visit thenextreel.com/letterboxd. You'll get 20% off. Works for renewals as well. Andy, what are you going to do for your review here? If there were a 6th star you could borrow from somewhere else, would you do it?
The interesting thing with like revisiting these and really thinking more critically about them is I do find more issues with both the second and third film that bog them down in some ways, but I still do enjoy this film so much. I feel like with that, I'm going to end up at 3.5 and a heart for this one.
Oh, 3.5. Wait a minute. What were you on the second one? 2? 2. So I was much higher originally on the second one and went down to 3. And this one, I don't even know what I was. I didn't even have a rating in it, just a watch in Letterboxd. So I'm just locking it in at 4 and then 5 for the second one, or for the first one. I'm sorry. So 5, 3, 4. Also, they're all hearts.
Yeah, I mean, even the second one, even though I only rated it 2 stars, is still a heart. Like, I enjoy the film. It's just so much of it is so stupid, but I still enjoy it.
Yes, so much of it is so stupid. Well, that was easy.
All right. Well, remember, everybody, you can visit thenextreel.com/letterbox and you can get your own patron or pro membership. It does work for renewals as well. And on top of that, if you would like to hear this show without hearing all of these ads all the time, remember, you can become a member of The Next Reel and join us to get your episodes early. You get our retake episodes. That's our next episode for members, is a retake episode where we're looking at the entire trilogy of this, just kind of as a macroscopic view, as I always say, of the whole, and we'll add them to our Flick Chart, and then members also get our monthly Flick Chart re-ranking episodes. So member bonus episodes, members get all sorts of stuff. So if you want to skip the ads, get everything early, and get a whole bunch of extra episodes, learn more about becoming a member at thenextreel.com/membership.
So what did you think about Back to the Future Part 3? We want to know. Head into the Show Talk channel on Discord, where we'll be talking about this movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins. Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
I've got a 4 star, so I'm going to go first because it's 1 star more than yours, right?
It is, yes.
Yeah. It's from Lindsay, who says, probably my favorite Western that I've ever seen, to be honest. I love the shot where you see a little bit of his butt. Was that supposed to be fan service? Do people find Marty McFly sexy? I love that. That slays me. I can't believe we forgot to talk about it. There's the whole scene where you see Marty McFly's naked butt. Is there a butt double? You think that was really him?
This was the era when butts were in fashion. Lethal Weapon, I think, turned a whole thing in the 80s, early 90s into, we need more butts.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I have a 3 star by Russman, who has this to say. I don't know why Doc is sad about the idea of leaving Clara in the past. I'm sure there's someone that looks exactly like her in 1985 or any era.
That's awesome. I like it. Anyway, that's fantastic, and I think everybody has doppelgangers across time, and that's the important lesson from these movies. Thanks, Letterboxd. It is hard to believe we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you. and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
The originals page at thenextreel.com/originals links to the source material from all of our adapted film discussions. Purchasing through our links support the show at no extra cost to you.
In Season 12, the focus was big franchises and series. We covered both Paddington films, adapted from the beloved children's book character created by Michael Bond.
Oh, I love those films so much.
Hugh Grant is perfect.
For our Pitch Perfect series, the first film was adapted from Mickey Rapkin's nonfiction book about collegiate a cappella competitions.
It's like a short story of my life, literally. I lived college a cappella.
Sing it, brother.
I lived college a cappella.
I didn't mean literally.
You know who you're talking to, right? The Twilight Saga dominated the season with 5 films adapted from Stephenie Meyer's vampire romance novels, Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and the 2 Breaking Dawn parts.
Dominated with awkward romance and nonsense logic is more like it.
That too.
Another Thin Man brought us back to Dashiell Hammett's only Thin Man sequel based on other Hammett material, The Farewell Murder, that wasn't just based on the characters from the first film.
We talked about Trainspotting and its sequel, T2 Trainspotting, adapted from Irvine Welsh's novels.
I hate the sequel's name.
I do too.
And the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy adapted from J.R.R. Tolkien's epic fantasy series.
Love these.
Extended editions all the way, baby.
Plus, all the Mission Impossible films based on the 1960s TV series.
And we've still got at least one more to go.
Members got to hear us chat about The Hustler and The Color of Money, adapted from Walter Tevis's books.
Get all of these books and more at our originals page, thenextreel.com/originals.
Start your next read from the movies we've covered at thenextreel.com/originals.